What's up, everybody? Welcome to Untitled Podcast. Here with your host, Brandon Young Yin. We're from New Zealand's maybe number one podcast here in Aotearoa. We're back at it again, guys. Before we start, I would like to welcome everyone who's watching. If you're running, if you're swimming, if you're jogging, whatever you are doing, working out, and you're listening to this podcast, make sure you tune in. We're in for a good one. We're excited. Also, feel free to follow us for more content, whether it be on YouTube, Instagram, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Apple Podcasts. Tune into all platforms, guys. We're there. Check it out and subscribe for more. Anyways, back to our show, guys. We're in for a good one. Joining us today, we have none other than the legendary Laki Tiatia, bro. What's up, brother? How's it going?
What's up, bro? Good. How are you?
Good, bro. Good.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Bro, it's great to have you here. It's been a long time coming. Guys, Lucky's a good friend of ours. We're grateful to have him here on the podcast. We'll just shoot off, bro. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Just give us your name, age, your favorite food, and then also, just let us know what you've been up to lately.
Yeah. So my name's Laki Tiatia. 25 now.
Let's go.
Favorite food, bro? Any like burger or anything?
Ooh.
I think can't beat a good Big Mac.
Any go-to burger joints here in Aotearoa?
Bro, honestly, just like anything. Like anything.
Any burger?
Yeah, bro. So I'm like, oh, bro, yeah. My mates think I'm just basic, but I'm just a simple guy.
Has there ever been a burger that you've been like, wow, that's the one?
Oh,
no?
Bro, for me, just consistency. Yeah, like the Big Mac, bro.
So that's Macca's.
Yeah, Macca's. Always it's there when you need it. 24/7.
I like it, bro.
But yeah, that's just a little bit me, and yeah. I guess what I've been up to lately. I guess having like a good summer. Over this last maybe a couple of weeks now. So I started a new job.
Oh, mean.
So just working in like the well-being space with like youth.
Yeah, bro.
In that sort of space, and just planning and looking ahead for the new academic year that's coming up and about to start my master's in like a month or so.
Excited?
Yeah, bro. Excited, eh? Like, I guess like I always knew I was gonna go uni, but
to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, like,
that's mean.
I guess never like always knowing I can make uni, but then like, bro, I get to graduate in May, and then like I get to start my master's like in a month, and I was like, bro, like this is.
Bro, that's mean.
Yeah, so excited.
How long is the program?
So this one's like a year and a half. So I do like a year where we're in classes and stuff, and then the start of next year, the first half of next year, it's a dissertation that's like 20,000 words. Yeah. Writing and like research and stuff like that. So that's me for like the next year and a half.
20,000 words is.
Bro, it's like a book.
Bro, that's like a novel.
It's like I can't even get to my 2,000 word essay. I'm like, man.
Struggle with the 1,000 word essays, and then you're gonna write a massive novel.
Yeah, so I have to find some words to fill up the gaps and make the word count.
Just double space, eh? I mean, bro. Yeah, bro. But speaking of education, like you yourself actually, graduating and then, going to your master's program. Actually, where are you graduating in, bro? Don't mind me asking.
So I did a Bachelor of Arts, and I majored in history and sociology.
Ooh.
And then for my master's, I'm going into Pacific Studies.
Bro, that's mean.
So that's sort of where.
We're probably gonna touch a little bit on that later on in the podcast, but that's so cool, bro. Getting then your higher education, just being able to be actually a good example, literally example, from our community going out there and achieving a higher education, bro. That's so mean. And then I guess going into one of our first questions, like just talk to us about the importance of education, like for you. Like, what was your goals, or what inspired you to actually, continue to achieve and especially study what you're studying right now?
Yeah. So, sorry. I guess like the big thing, right, with any, so like I'm first generation out of the island. So my parents came like the 70s.
Yeah.
And just fulfilling like the traditional, like the classic migrant dream for us to have like a better life. And I guess growing up, like my parents would always say like, hey, like this is the key. Right? Like, and as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that like the education is is the ultimate equalizer. Right? So no matter where we come from or who we are, if we're able to gain a good education, if that looks like a degree or looks like a trade, right? Like that's the ultimate equalizer where you're able to, I guess, have a solid platform for your future
For your
and
family.
also for your family as well.
Bro.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much what drives me, and like why education is so important to me, and I guess just seeing how hard like my parents have worked, and being able to like think, hey, right, if my parents are working this hard, so my dad's a bus driver, my mom works at Pack and Save, right, and if I'm matching their work ethic, right, if I match that with my work ethic and education, I think there should not be any reason for me to succeed. And I guess just getting this far is like a testament to that. And so for me, education is important just because I know that's the way up for me and my family. And then in my field, where I studied in the history and sociology, I've always been into like history and culture and society. And I sort of fell into it like by accident. But like I guess growing up like out of the islands and like not being able to growing up not knowing how to speak Samoan and maybe not having like a real traditional upbringing. Yeah. So I was like, bro, like you might know like language, right? But like the way I can attach myself to my identity is knowing where I'm from,
who I am,
the
roots,
stories of like my parents, grandparents, their parents, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And so that's what pretty much hooked me into this sort of space. And then, yeah, bro, that's just been me for like the last couple of years now.
Bro, that's mean, bro. I especially loved what you said about implementing, you yourself being, first generation, and then, bringing that, those skills and things that you learned from your parents, bro. Like, that's so true. Like, because I personally can relate to that as well. And then you yourself, what I really love was when you talked about how if I can implement their hard work to what I'm doing, like, I'll be able to build that platform. And I feel like that's something that I guess a lot of us struggle with, especially, first, second, third generation, Polynesian families here in New Zealand, Australia, wherever they may be. Like, sometimes we struggle to understand that fact that, our families didn't really come here for just to have a holiday. Our families came here to have a better future, provide for our family, build that foundation and platform that our kids and their kids and hopefully generations to come, they'll be able to be in a better place than they were,
Yeah, for sure. And I think it just follows, if we look at Pacific history, it just follows a long line of searching for like a better future or new possibilities, right? The migration of Pacific people throughout the Pacific and some different islands. It's all been for a search of like a better future, and like promise. And I just think about how ungrateful it would be for us to spoil that opportunity that we have.
100%, bro.
And like man, like I remember my dad always telling me like, bro, like we didn't come here, right? And we're not like working these jobs for you to end up, right? Like not like next to us, right? And I know it can be a tough position for a lot of people, a lot of families, but I think just with the village and the community that we have as Pacifica people, that there's enough out there, and we are enough to pull ourselves up, and whatever that sort of looks like.
That's so true, bro. Do you feel like that there's quite a few of us in that do take advantage of that fact, like being comfortable here in New Zealand?
I'm not too sure. Like I don't know if it's too comfortable or just not knowing that there's more that we could do. Right. I'm pretty blessed in that I went to schools where I was exposed to people whose parents were like lawyers, doctors, engineers. They had like, I remember in like primary school, people would ask what we did for the holidays, and all the kids would answer like, oh, we went to our batch down in Whangamata, or like, I was like, oh, bro, I went to my batch in Samoa. Bro, my house in Samoa was like a whale with no walls. and so like being able to be exposed to like, man, this is what is out there for you. And so maybe just, I guess, following the trailblazers that have gone before us, and then being like, hey, bro, that's what we can become. That's where we can be.
That's so true, bro. focusing on, what we can become is so vital. I feel like, for our own communities, success in that term. And I feel like, with like, I like what you said, because like looking forward kind of relates to looking back. Because me personally, bro, I feel like, when you understand who you are and your roots and stuff, especially, with you, I'm coming from like learning about history and stuff like that, and our community and our culture, right? Like understanding our people and our identity and where we've come from, I feel like has a huge role in that in that success. Because if you think about it, bro, like our people, like, gee, like all we're doing was working, bro.
Yeah.
Think about that, like all of us had to earn what we keep. We had to earn our keep. We had to earn. We had to, but everything we did was for our family and for our survival and for a better future.
Yeah. I think there's that like Maori proverb, ka mua ka muri. Bro, if I butchered that, I'm sorry. but I think the meaning behind it is like moving forwards, traveling. Bro, I'm butchering this mean. Like looking backwards, traveling forward.
Yeah.
So like knowing where you've come from, and that then informing where you go to. And yeah, that just follows a story that's been in from our parents' parents for generations now. And now I guess it's like this talking is now a chance for us to grab hold into that and move forward.
Cause bro, 100%. Cause I guess coming from personal experience, bro, one thing that my family did that I can always remember growing up was like we always went to Samoa on the holidays, like. And it was like a must. And when we went on the holidays, bro, we didn't stay in like a hotel and stuff. Like sometimes we did, but most part, 90% of the times, like we would stay with our family in Samoa. And when we stayed with family in Samoa, bro, like I can remember like, going out, helping my cousins, doing that. Like, bro, all of that played a big part of me, like understanding like where I came from, what we can accomplish, and just the small skills, like, doing the umu at 4 o'clock in the morning before church, like that was and understanding that was my cousins and my uncles like everyday life.
Yeah.
And then like implementing that, right? Trying to implement that hard work and that into what we try and do, hopefully, in the future.
Yeah. And so I guess like going off of that, like myself having lived in Samoa for 2 years, and like realizing that there aren't like a lot of options there. And so when I came back to New Zealand, figuring like, man, like my problem isn't that I have no options, that I have so many, and I just need to pick one, right? And if one doesn't work out, all good, because there's still 5 others, and sometimes you don't find that option that's perfect for you unless you try the others first. And so I just think we're blessed, right? We're privileged,
100.
And we just gotta go get it, like.
Yeah. I just feel like it's just trying to get ourselves to understand that we're so blessed and understand that there's so many opportunities, because I know like there's a lot of kids here and families that they feel like it is restrictive and there's not a lot of options here, like like they put themselves back in, like they either say, oh, the system this or this, right, or other excuses, but then they look back and like not really realizing that, bro, like the world is theirs, you can, the world is yours for taking, you just gotta put your mind forth and just go for it,
Yeah, and I definitely think that's true, right? That we, I think, although there are like the odds might be stacked against us, statistics, whatever. There's always like an ability for us to push through those, and I guess just coming from like our background and to know that, bro, like we have like a village that's here to support, right? That you might be struggling, or you and your family, but you've just the way our Pacific culture is set up is that there's always someone or something to lean on. So I guess that's like a tough sort of space to like navigate, because not like even within our own Pacific community, that we sometimes think that we're one thing, but actually if we look into the Pacific, it's so diverse, right? Like Samoa's not the same as Tonga. Living in Ponta as a Samoan isn't the same as living out in Manurewa as a Samoan. Right, and so even recognizing that, or even within like the Pacific community, there's diversity, and we're not all the same, right? But we're sort of like cut from the same cloth, and so it's a challenging one, but I think it's a challenge that we ourselves can help solve, and that we can bring solutions to as Pacifica people as well.
100%. Like I feel like we have that potential, and we have the skill, potential, and the support, to achieve those things, going off this, focusing a lot about history and also, about our culture, right? And you especially within history in Pacific, what would you say is a big reason why, other than what the reasons we talked about before, important for us to understand our own history in terms of, our Pacific nations?
Yeah, man, I think like personally, like it gave me like a sense of identity, right? That although like I don't speak the language, or I'm not as immersed as the other people, like my connection can be through what I know, right? And knowing my history, where I'm from. And it's interesting that when you look across sort of like the landscape of New Zealand, if you look at like the creative sort of industries, that's all being led by Pacific people telling Pacific stories. You look at like the Disney model, right? That they've made billions of telling a Pacific story, which is Moana.
Yeah.
Right, and so what we might think is at times as like stories that aren't worthwhile, actually like Disney's making bank off, right? And it's not that we need to make money off it, but that we need to own our own stories.
Own our own stories.
Because it gives us a sense of identity, like value, and just a sort of like a source of strength and support, right? And like the old analogy, like that the strongest trees have the deepest roots, right? And so if we take that example of knowing our history, then the more we know, the deeper, the more healthy the roots are. That when whatever storms, adversity we go through, we know that we're solid and solidified in the grounds, right? In the soil that we sow. And so I think just knowing our history, it's just what locks us to like our culture, right? Knowing why we do things, how we do things, and also like knowing that culture and that history can change, right? And I guess
100%.
learning from the history of the past, so we don't repeat it.
Yeah, bro.
Or like learning from the history of the past, and okay, that worked really well. Let's keep doing that.
Let's keep doing that. And what doesn't work well, let's stop doing that.
Yeah. Right. And so I think that's, I guess, to answer the question is that, like, from knowing where we've been, we'll know who we are today. And once we take that, we'll be better able to navigate what and where we'll be in the future. And to me, that's why knowing our history as Pacific people is so important, and one that I'm just like interested in. I'm like, man, there's so much I don't know about my own history, right? Because like this blood runs thousands of years.
That's true.
But like I might only know, I don't know how far I know back, and that's no fault of anyone's. It's just maybe together we can cultivate and
understand that.
An understanding of that history and that culture.
Understanding who we are and owning our own stories. Bro, one story that a couple podcasts ago got to interview some surfers from Hawaii. Shout out to Lucy and Siva from Hawaii. But bro, they were just talking about how how they were we were surfers back in the days, and that's something that that's one thing that they understood. There's from a Polynesian background, like a Pacific background, they were one of the first our people were one of the first surfers, I guess, and understanding that aspect, especially of everything in water, bro. And then they're just telling me how we were surfers and we're able to surf, and it's a skill that's been lost, and that's something that I guess that with stories and with understanding history, right, we see what we've lost and what we've gained. One of them, unfortunately, some of the things we have lost are skills, that. And then I always this is a funny thing because I always talk to my family about this. I'm like, man, I'm telling you guys, man, just give me 4 years, I'll learn sailing and maybe I'll get a gold medal.
But that's so true, right? Like we've come from thousands of years of people who've been able to sail, and bro, I don't know what usual that is how to sail yet.
I don't know. I haven't seen anyone. I haven't ever seen a Pacific Islander sailing.
Yeah. But even not even just the sailing itself, but the engineering behind the double hull. So if you look at a couple years ago, maybe almost 10 years ago, but like the cutting edge technology for American Cup sailing, if you look at an old photo and you look at sort of Pacific vessels,
that's how they're built.
You'll see the connection, right? Of like having double hull next to each other, because that sort of outrigger thing gives it support and stability, and that's what you saw like a couple of years ago at the America's Cup.
That's so, bro. That's mean.
Yeah, and so it's like, bro, like engineers, right, navigators, like astronomers, knowing the stars, knowing that our Pacific people knew all the constellations.
Because we were known as the greatest navigators, correct?
Yeah, right. So to navigate that ocean, and early on, like academics were like, bro, there's no way they could have sort of these islands on purpose. But actually now it's like common knowledge that, bro, these guys were masters, right? And that they're like, because they needed to know the stars. So astronomers, engineers, sailors, you gotta know that you gotta prepare. So you gotta be able to know how to farm. Like our people are mean farmers.
Yo,
you go to the islands now, everyone knows how to farm.
You're right.
Fish, even like stuff like diplomats. And so I think a lot of the times we look outwards. Like in Pacific, as Pacific, we can look outwards to learn. But if we took like a closer look at our own history and our own culture, we'll realize that actually, like, I don't need to go to look at like America or like in Europe. The answers to my questions on how I can be are found in the Pacific. I was reading a book called Leaders Eat Last, and it's all about like leadership and things to do. And I was reading the book, and by the time I got to the end, I'm like, I haven't really learned anything crazy new.
Yeah.
Because this is how the leaders in my family lead.
We're brought up.
Yeah. Right? Like the leaders eat last. Like, bro, in my house, right, like we serve first and then we eat last. And that's how leaders are brought up, to first serve. And so again, just knowing that there's a lot of knowledge, skills and tools found within the Pacific that I think aren't utilized or aren't known of. And that's not because of maybe anyone's fault necessarily, but we can then, I guess, as where I'm at and hopefully where we're at, be able to bring those back and be like, bro, we were onto something, and just holding on to what we know.
Bro, that's so crazy, bro. I'm just like, it's just crazy just understanding part of your history and what you went through and what your ancestors went through, and then having that sense of identity. And then, learning those skills and then understanding that, all these attribute stuff, they came from the Pacific. Right? And it's just trying to help, these next generations understand that, more about their history, more about their own people. And because, bro, I guess, let me ask you, has there been like a story that you've heard that's crazy, or like any or like maybe
there's been heaps of there's stories of like.
What's like been one of your most your favorite story?
Probably my favorite story is I was looking into when COVID hit, when it first hit. I was looking into how did because we were all preparing, right? Like big pandemic, like how do we prepare for emergency? And I was trying to figure out, man, like the islands are susceptible to tsunami, earthquake, storms. So how did my ancestors prepare for those? Like, did they? Because I don't know any stories. And I was like, bro, or did they just chill on the island and then a storm came and they're like, oh, laters, right? But there's, so I reached out to a couple of people who are really knowledgeable, like in the space, in the Samoan history space, and one of them shared with me a story about the term masi, which is what translates to biscuit. But if you look at like a lot of the words in Samoan culture, a lot of things that are foreign to Samoa get transliterated. So like broom becomes pulumu, right? Like, so like a broom object, European object gets transliterated to that. And so I was thinking, like, why is masi biscuit? Why shouldn't biscuit be something like biskeki, or I don't know, something like that? And then what they shared with me is that the breadfruit used to be, they used to prepare it in a way where you could store it and ferment it in the ground and just leave it there for months and for years. And so when a storm would come and clear all the taro and the bananas and clear all the crops,
they'll still have
what they could live off. They could live off that fermented breadfruit that they would then dig up from the ground and then bake, or like someone bake. And like when I heard that, I was like, bro, like, as these are stories that we haven't heard, and that just shows the preparedness, the forward thinking, the learning that our ancestors would have went through to come up with
those like different ideas,
like experimenting, right? And so that's like one example that personally to me like just really stood out, because I've heard a lot of the stories of navigators, astronomers, engineers, but something like this emergency time preparation, like bro, we were doing that like way back, right? And that would have been the case for a lot of the Pacific as well, like having like an emergency food storage.
Well, that's mean.
Yeah, and so like that's only one. Like you have people and their individual stories, like traveling throughout Europe, right? Like Captain Cook's lead navigator was a guy from Tahiti, right? Tahitian, right? And that story is now getting told a little bit more, and like he's getting the credit a little bit more now.
I guess it's just trying to find like those stories, eh?
Yeah.
And it probably hasn't been easy trying to find these stories, eh? It's like
and it's like so like first like because these are out there, but it's accessibility. Like with anything, right? It's like, okay, who do we go to get these stories? So like could be elders, but not everyone. So like the way I gained a lot of my knowledge was through messaging people through Facebook, like a modern way to network and gain that knowledge. But also to understand that some knowledge in the Pacific is sort of gatekept because it's sacred. Bro. So that comes with like bloodlines, royal lines, and that knowledge is specific to that family. But there's still so much more out there. Bro. And there's still knowledge that we can rediscover as well.
That's so true. Bro, that's so mean, bro. That's just like...
it's buzzy,
it's like, buzzy, bro. I'm not going to be like, bro, like... just so much that, like, once you hear a story, then you have so many other questions, and you have so many other questions after that, you know?
And so it just turns into like a rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, bro.
It's like, and I guess that's what happened with me. Like, first what really started me was the tau and navigation, and then it moved to like astronomy. Then like it's just gone all over the place.
Yeah.
And so like there isn't like a planned way that it's happened. It's just sort of like, bro. Or then I guess the more you come to understand, the more questions you ask. And yeah, like it's amazing. Like when you really get to sit down and understand
that, bro.
It's like, man, because I only grew up watching like movies about the Romans and
like all the you know the Greeks, the Greek mythology, and all the Europeans, you know, all those stuff. You know, and I'm like, you don't really think about our own. You know,
and it's so rich and it's so deep, poetic, that it's like, man.
Yeah, the only ones I really know is Johnny Lingo and Moana.
Right. And so like, so there's so many stories out there. And so just finding, and we come from like a storytelling background, so hopefully more of our people get up.
Crossing fingers that they get to share those with us in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on to the next question, bro. You know, speaking about where you're at right now, and of course, you know, with the knowledge you have right now in terms of culture, with school, surely there's been a lot of setbacks and failures. And I guess that's a lot of things that we love to focus on is understanding the importance of failures and setbacks. And I guess our next question would be, has there ever been a setback or failure that you've been most grateful for? There's one that really sticks out to mind, and it's funny because now like I graduate this year, like I start a master's program, but I failed my first semester of uni. Like I failed bad. And that's probably one that I was probably most grateful for. And looking back, I'm like, man, if that hadn't happened, because at the area I was studying, and like it wasn't a passion of mine, wasn't like an interest, but because of the outside noise, I was like, oh, that's something I need to do to get a good job. And then having like failed that miserably just redirected me to like, you know what, I'm gonna just try what I really like and what I've found, and I'm gonna see where that leads me. And being like a history and sociology major, like a lot of people are like, bro, what are you gonna do with that? But I've actually found like I've had so many like opportunities for employment to get get good money to help my family and stuff like that, and that's become from because I've been able to like really learn from my mistake, and then that pretty much pushed me into where I'm at now. Push you to where you're at now.
Yeah.
Bro. It's just understanding that like, I guess sometimes we don't really understand certain situations at a certain time, but when we live out a couple, you know, when we look back, then that's when we tend to understand, man, that's why this happened.
Yeah.
And now I'm here, you know.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And so like I think that's my fascination with history, right? Because we have our own personal history, right? If we don't learn from that,
That's cool.
then that's like a failure, right?
Yeah.
If I hadn't learned from that, and I just did the same thing over and over again, but like having our own personal history, our family, then our collective.
Yeah.
Then we can just like I guess the examples that we see around us is, and like myself being able to navigate a new space, because I look back and I was like, okay, don't do that. Right, so like back yourself, back what you're into, right, and just let that push you into like wherever it's gonna go.
Just being okay with failure too, eh?
Yeah. I think that's a big thing, right? Like being scared that we'll fail, like that maybe we'll get judged for it. But really, like if you really think about it, no one actually cares about it.
Yeah, exactly, bro. That's so true. And like, I mean, we like, like failure may be big at that time, but you know, the more you fail, the more you're likely to succeed. And when you do succeed, those failures, like, no one really looks about those failures at the end of it, right? It's the success that people tend to, you know. But like, if we're willing to, you know, put the work in and actually understand that, I have some setbacks and I have some obstacles to go across, bro, I'm gonna be able to. One day I'm gonna hit it, and then when I do, bro, it's gonna all work out, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think what you shared earlier, right, about like maybe like being comfortable, being complacent, that could be like your biggest hindrance to your progress, right? It is that, but actually not like being afraid to try something, to do something, and even if that fails, bro, you can live good. Like I gave it a shot, all good, right? And like yeah, and because the real failure would be to not
try at all.
Yeah.
100%, bro. If you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Probably pretty much what we just talked about. Like, I guess being young, like when I was younger, like bro, like all these worries you have about how people think of you, like, bro, no one actually cares.
No one really cares, bro.
Like, you know, hot, bro. Like, no one's watching Instagram and what, you know. But I think that's probably the biggest one I'd give myself. Like, bro, like no one's actually thinking that about you. And like the most important thing is what you think about yourself and who you want to be. And that just comes from just like backing yourself and not being scared to just be you and do what you want to do.
Love it, bro. Going to a last question, you know, focusing on, we talked a lot about identity, talked a lot about ourselves and, you know, understanding ourselves. And I guess to our last question, what does authentic mean to you, bro?
Yeah, bro. So like, so watching the episodes, like knowing this question's coming, like I stood there and I was like, man, so many things. But I'm like, man. But I think to me, like what it means to be authentic just means to be honest. And like being honest to yourself, honest to like your family, to the dreams that you have. Be honest to like your failures and owning those. That's when you pose that question, that's what I think of. Just being honest with who you are, where you want to be, where you have been, and then just moving from there.
Bro. I like what you talked about, you know, just being honest, because I feel like if the most important person to be honest to is ourselves. And I guess, you know, honesty is a kind of trait, you know, relates to integrity. And I guess when we have true integrity, bro, like we're able to become a more better part of ourselves. Like that really helps us to reach different sights and goals that we can become. Because like when you're honest with yourself, honest with who you are, like there's like nothing holding you back, you know?
Yeah. And I guess like if you're not honest to yourself, no one else is gonna be.
Exactly.
Like, unless you have like brothers like mine or whatever, right? Like, but yeah, like you really need to hold like yourself accountable, and that's not only just for your faults but for your failures, right? Like, bro, like you know what, like I achieved,
especially your failures, bro. Especially your failures.
So like, man, although like I failed at that, being honest, but then being like, bro, I achieved, like I get to graduate, start myself, bro. I'm gonna own that, right? Because that's been my hard work, but also the hard work of my family and my friends, and not shying away from things like that.
Bro, that's mean, bro. Bro, we're grateful for all your amazing insights here, bro. Lucky, we're grateful for you being here with
Thanks
us.
for having me, bro.
Bro, can't wait to get you out in another episode. Talk about winning gold medals and stuff.
Learning how to swim.
I'm gonna be a surfer after this. Mean, bro. Guys, we're grateful to have you guys listening in. Again, if you're tuning in, wherever you are, Spotify, Instagram, if you're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, guys, tune in and listen up. We have amazing content to share. Also, we'll make sure to put Lucky's Instagram platforms and stuff on here at the bottom of the video. And guys, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, and let us know what you guys think about the episode as well. Until next time, though, we'll see you guys. Thank you so much.
Laters.